than his family. Many of us chosen our families first and the country after. And that is unrevolutionary, that is very, very reactionary. Now, without much ado, I would like to call upon Comrade Mosiah to come and present the paper. While Comrade Mosiah is approaching the stage, can we kindly have a revolutionary song?
In Azania, South Africa, at the World Wide Pan-Afrikan Conference. This is a revolutionary movement that is taking place on the continent of Mother Africa and in Azania, South Africa. We are live, family.
Oh, sure.
Africa
Africa
is
Israel. Africa
Israel.
one settler.
One bullet.
One settler.
One bullet.
One bullet.
One settler.
Settler.
Bullet. Bullet.
Bullet.
Bullet.
One Azania.
One nation.
One Azania.
One nation.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Black power.
Greetings, sons and daughters of the soil. I greet you all in the divine names of our ancestors, on whose shoulders we stand, whose blood runs through our veins, and whose experiences are encoded in our genetic memory. I greet you all, brothers and sisters, in the divine names of Obantu Biko, divine names of Mangaliso Sobukwe, in the divine name of Patrice Lumumba. I greet you in the divine name of Amilcar Cabral, in the divine name of the Dan Kimati, the Mau Mau warriors. I greet you in the divine name of Mama Neanda, Buya Neanda of Zimbabwe. I greet you in the divine name of the Queen Nyabingi Umasa of Uganda, who crushed and defeated the imperialists. I greet you in the divine names of all our ancestors, those named and those unnamed, those known and those unknown, those born and those unborn. Black power.
Black power.
Sons and daughters, I'm not going to waste any time. My subject today that I'm going to speak about is the decolonization of the education system and knowledge production in Africa. One of the reasons why African people remain in the condition that we are in is because European people and Arab people, all the invaders of Africa, when they entered the continent, they not only colonized land and took our people and stole them and sold them into slavery, but they also colonized, knowledge production.
Right.
They colonized knowledge about Africa, knowledge about ourselves, and basically that is why we talk about the colonization of the mind. European people have infused our minds with all these white supremacist constructs which govern our lives today on all aspects of our lives. Whether it's in education that I'm going to talk about, whether it's in religion, whether it's in politics, entertainment, all the aspects of our lives. In law, the law is racist, it's white supremacist, it's a white construct. We study Roman Dutch law here in Azania. Anyone who goes into a university to study law studies Roman Dutch law. Anyone who goes into a university to study medicine has to take a so-called Hippocratic oath. We will speak more about who are these people. Why is it that African people, each and every day, on a daily basis, we send our children to schools to be colonized? On a daily basis, we go into the streets, we sit in meetings and conferences, we agitate for the liberation of African land. Yes, politically, we want Africa to be liberated. But what about academically? It seems as though sometimes we accept what is known as academic imperialism, the intellectual colonization of African people. I'm just going to get into a speech because I prepared something and it's not going to be for long. But I would like to read through it. We are usually told
ended in 1994. But white supremacy continues to be a characteristic feature of all dominant public institutions in Africa. One of the most powerful of these social institutions is the university, with its Eurocentric whitewashing curriculum. All ideas, all philosophies, all theories, generally, all systems of learning and knowing in the education curriculum have a Eurocentric historical and cultural base. This Eurocentric bias is not just manifest in the social sciences and humanities, but also in the academic disciplines of mathematics, physics, chemistry, astrology, agriculture, and subjects like the history and philosophy of science, and even political science. Throughout the world, Black people are colonized by a Eurocentric education system. All over the world, Black people still attend, study, and graduate in other people's institutions of learning. These are the centers of Blackness education, from preschooling to primary, secondary, tertiary levels of education. Black people are still dependent on the institutions created by white oppressors. The very few Black institutions that do exist are undermined and not recognized, even by Black people themselves. Throughout the world, Black people subject their children to a European education curriculum designed to advance the socio-economic and political interests of global white supremacy. And through his educational institutions, the white boy trains and indoctrinates Black people to work for white supremacy against their own racial interests. In fact, besides religion, white education is the primary instrument the white boy uses to recreate himself in Black skins. Most of the Blacks who graduate from these institutions work tirelessly for white supremacy without even questioning it. They are merely proud to wear the fancy titles like doctor, professor, scholar, intellectual, analyst, expert, specialist, and all these other grand titles the white boy gives to them. These trained Blacks never speak up against the white boy. Instead, they intellectualize the struggle of the Black race against white supremacy. They preach integration, multiculturalism, assimilation of the Black race into the white power structures. With all their education and so-called skills, all the supposed sophistication and intellect, but they are unable to build any institutions of their own. They remain well-trained, sophisticated slaves, qualified slaves and employees of the white boy. The nature of the education they receive is such that it trains them to love their enemies more than they love themselves. And they are also so willing to cooperate and so they are willing corporate and intellectual servants of the global white power structure. The education that Black people receive today is Eurocentric, and it socializes Blacks into accepting white supremacy as the norm, as the ultimate reality. White supremacy is all that exists. Our people are taught that white people, their ideas, their experiences, their worldviews, their social constructs are superior. They are said to be scientific and universal. A case in point here are the glorified intellectual scholars of white supremacy, like Immanuel Kant, Friedrich Engels, Max Weber, Emily Durkheim, Hegel, Rousseau, Gramsci, Foucault, and the Zionist Jew Chaim Herschel Mordechai, popularly known as Karl Marx. These scholars of white supremacy are glorified as scientific thinkers and authorities in the areas of values, ethics, sociology, economics, psychology, philosophy, and political sciences. We never hear of Naked, the ancestral scribe, and his artist sister, Thando, who were both teachers of values, principles, and ethics long before these Europeans were even born. We never hear of Tao, called God Hermes by the Greek, the divine writer and the teacher of law, justice in ancient Kemet, thousands of years before even the birth of Europe. We hear nothing of Osa and Oset, called Osiris and Isis by the Greek, who made the cultivation of humanizing values a permanent aim of the arts and sciences. We hear nothing of Tahotep, Kagemi, Ani, Nefertiti, whose works were all concerned with philosophy and political science. This is academic imperialism. It is the intellectual colonization of African minds. An African-centered education will teach black people to stop intellectual outsourcing. While we found outsourcing in our universities of, securities, cleaners, and everyone else, but we accept intellectual outsourcing of European ideas, ideologies, worldviews, philosophies, and socio-economic political systems. An African-centered education will teach African people to interpret African realities from an African center, informed by global African experiences and the proper African history. It is well established that historically, colonization destroyed and changed the indigenous systems of education in all occupied territories as a means of containing revolt, subjugating the colonized, and stabilizing European domination. Moreover, the colonial regimes established new educational institutions in line with the colonial ethos and culture. The new colonial education system brought with it the racist idea that only Europeans had innovated in science and contributed to human civilization in order to induce a sense of inferiority on the colonized subjects. They instituted new ways of knowing and knowledge that justified white supremacist paradigms. Consequently, contemporary scholarship in Africa and here in Azania specifically continues to dismiss African epistemologies, African indigenous knowledge systems in general as being non-academic, unscientific, and delusionary at least, or superstitious and backwards at worst. Sons and daughters, what I'm talking about here is the fact that we know that in universities or anywhere else, everything that is African is unscientific. We are told that African people, even our history was never written. Our history was oral. That's a white lie. A big white lie that is told and preached over and over to our people in the classrooms. Right now, our children are still learning this. You see? And we know very well that Africa, our history is written in papyrus. Our history is written in the temples of Kemet, the temples in Ghana, the temples in ancient Nubia, coming right down throughout the African continent. Our civilizations, our history is written in stones, sons and daughters of the soil. The handwritings on the walls, everything that we are taught in the classrooms that originated from Europe. We are taught that, as I said, the father of philosophy is a European. Socrates. We are taught about, the father of mathematics, Pythagoras. We are taught about the father, of all of these disciplines, sons and daughters. Father of history is who? Herodotus. These are all Greek scholars, white boys, who all came to Africa as children, little babies. Each one of them spent more than a decade studying in Africa at the feet of Black African men, Black African scholars in the ancient temples, which were the oldest universities. Because in Africa, our centers of learning were one with our spirituality, our way of life. In a university, you did not only learn about intellect, philosophy, and all of astrology. You learned about the universe, mathematics. You learned all disciplines. When you came out of a university, you came out knowing mathematics, science, astrology, all these kinds of disciplines. All the sciences, you were a master in all of them. And all of these white boys that are taught in the classrooms that they are father of this, father of that, all of them came to Africa. The father of medicine is a black man called Imhotep. Not the hypocrite, called hypocrites.
That's right.
Although the African historian, anthropologist, and physicist Ntati Chikata Diop argued that the history of Black Africa will remain suspended in air and cannot be written correctly until African historians dare to connect it with the history of Egypt. Contemporary scholarship still fails to make that essential connection. Greece and Rome, Europeans are still the primary epistemological frames of reference in academia, not Egypt. Universities in Africa still propagate racist, Eurocentric knowledge systems and methodologies. Generally, Eurocentric modes of behavior, Eurocentric modes of thinking, Eurocentric knowledge production, Eurocentric knowledge acquisition, and Eurocentric knowledge dissemination. This reproduces and reinforces European intellectual domination of African people and the racist notion of a backward Africa. African people never created anything. We had no scientists. We had no thinkers. We had no philosophers. We contributed nothing to civilization. And so we have to go to Europe as a frame of reference for anything. We have to go to Europe to try and solve African solutions. This is the challenge that we are faced with. Even those of our intellectuals who are politicized, they still are chained by white supremacy intellectually. Yes. They cannot escape the shackles. They cannot, it's a religious thing. White supremacy is deeply embedded, you see, in our minds. And this is what the education system is designed to do. When a child goes to school from a young age, the images that children are shown in school, the images of heroes, the images that our children visualize of everyone who did anything that is good, the process of socializing our children, it's Eurocentric from a young age. And as I said, this is across the board. The clothes you buy them, the Barbie pictures, the dolls you give them to play with, the cartoons they watch, white, all those white images, they are damaged, they are designed to colonize the mind of black people, to make us think that everything that is white is good, everything white is superior, white is perfect, white is scientific, white is universal, white is the norm. And so, you have to live up to the norm as a black person, as a black child. Universities Okay, sorry. All these so-called Greek scholars and philosophers were students in ancient Africa. I've said that already. The father of medicine is Hippocrates, we are told. The father of history is Herodotus, we are told. The father of philosophy is Socrates or Thales, we are told. The father of mathematics is Pythagoras. You have Orpheus, Democritus, after which democracy is named. Aristotle, Homer, all these glorified Greek scholars were but children who studied in Kemet. Long before these white boys were even born, blacks in Kemet were already mastering all the scientific disciplines and had advanced into the second dynasty of their high culture civilization. Imhotep, Ptahotep, Amenemhat, Merkare, Amenhotep, Akhenaten are just a few of some of the Kemetic philosophers, astrologers, scientists, mathematicians, and architects who lived thousands of years even before Greece was born. This information must be included in the curriculum taught to black children in schools. An African-centered education must be centered on Kemetic knowledge systems. All these critical challenges that we see in the education system throughout the continent are rooted in the imposition of Eurocentric knowledge systems on African students. This perpetuates intellectual white supremacy. I mean, black children, we are told today that black students are struggling with science and mathematics. In order for you to pass in the education curriculum or in the education system today, you pass with 30%. That's the bar that's been set. 30% is a pass rate in this country. And we are told that black students, we are these stupid children who really do not know science. And the reason, primarily, sons and daughters, is because we cannot relate to the education system. Black kids can't relate to what is taught to them in the classroom. It is foreign. A black child in the classroom would sleep because they can't relate to what is taught to them in the classroom. It does not speak to them. It does not speak to their soul.
Right.
And the classroom is supposed to speak to the mind and the soul, the body, mind, and the soul. You see, you are building a whole being. That is what the education system is supposed to do. Not to create qualified slaves and servants of white supremacy. Because that is what we are today. We come out of the university well-dressed, with your qualification, with your PhD, with all your titles, you remain nothing but a qualified slave.
Yes.
You see? And this is the situation that all these institutions that are out there, as I said, the education system is just one. Religion, the churches, all the aspects, law, every little thing in the law that we have, it's European. It is the very same law that keeps us colonized.
Yeah.
You see? Every time black people want to reclaim their land, you want to talk about your land, you want to go and take your land, they will invoke the what? Law. And what they will do, they will manipulate your feelings and your emotions, because naturally as a black person, you are spiritual, you are divine by nature, so they will use what? Religion to manipulate you. Use concepts of forgiveness, you see, because they know that you are this person who naturally, you are a divine being, you are a godly being, you are in tune with nature, naturally. You see? And so they use that to manipulate our minds, to manipulate our people. And so what must be done going forward? For education to be meaningful and to deal with the contemporary challenges facing black people in general and black students in particular, an African-centered education is the only course of action to take. Implicit within the framework of an African-centered education is the idea of the liberation of the African mind. The project of decolonization of the continent can only be achieved through the transformation of the mindset of Africans to appreciate their classical history of ancient civilizations. Indigenous knowledge systems of Africa and Africa's classical history, detailing all our contributions to civilization, must be incorporated in the education system. African universities must acknowledge that Africa is not only the cradle of humanity, but also the cradle of the intellectual and scientific disciplines of the world. Academics and scholars in Africa must construct African-centered approaches to education and demonstrate its practical value in the dismantling of white supremacy. What must be taught in our schools? 1. History of African civilizations from Kemet, Kush, Nubia, right down to Monomotapa. The African origins of philosophy, the African origins of science, the African origins of astronomy, agriculture, architecture, engineering, aeronautics, mathematics, medicine, metallurgy, physics, and writing systems must be taught in all schools. Historic material and academic information detailing Black contributions to modern science and inventions must be taught in schools. Because a lot of the things that we use, the modern technologies, the gadgets we use today, they wouldn't exist if it weren't for Africa. Some of them are invented by African people, internet, these things, gadgets, laptops, cell phones, all of these things are invented by Black, the robots, fridge, all of these things are invented by Black people.
That's right.
But as Black people who are indoctrinated by white supremacy, we are made to believe that everything we use, technology, when we say we must return to the roots, let us return to who we were or who we are. People think that we are saying, let's go back to the jungles. Because Europeans have constructed a history which says African people lived in the jungles. You had no civilization, you had no technology, you just had to wait for white people to come and give you all of these things. Number 4, and the last point, military science must be a compulsory subject at high school level in order to train African youth to be what Dr. Jacob Caruthers calls intellectual maroons. We need intellectual warriors. We need intellectual guerrillas who are going to fight for the African Revolution, who are going to fight for Black power. Soweto, Africa,
Isolated. One bullet. One bullet.
Give thanks.
Black power. Black power. Black power.
Just before I go to Africa, I just want to show you, there's about 10 images I want to show you. I just want to run through those images and then I'll step down some of the soil. This is, you know, when we talk of universities, most of the people think that the concept of a university comes from Europe. But these temples of ancient Kemet, these were the first temple universities that I said all of these Greek so-called scholars came to learn here. These were built thousands of years ago. This is just one, the Temple of Abydos. It's an ancient Kemet. You can still go there and see it. The writings are on the walls. Europeans call it hieroglyphics, but it's actually called Medunete. The writings on those walls, the first writing systems of the world. This one is Denera, Hato. The structures of the universities you see all around the world. The structures of the courthouses. The structures, I'm talking about the architecture of the courts, the architecture of the libraries, and all the other institutions you see out there, which you think that it's European architecture. It is African architecture. This is the temple of Osset, known as Isis. In Europe, they know her as the Black Madonna or as the Madonna and Child.
Right.
The first concept of the Madonna and Child, or a Mary and Jesus, it comes from ancient Kemet. There was no Mary and Jesus according to the ancient Kemetic history. It's a mythology. If you study the history of ancient Kemet, you will know that this story is throughout the world.
Right.
All the indigenous societies have the very same story. This is the temple of Amen. The temple of Laxo. If you can see these pillars, these are the very same pillars that are used in all the structures that we have talked about. Sons and daughters. All these universities, libraries, institutions that you see, they have the very same pillars. And these pillars were not just pillars. Most of these buildings had 42 pillars, which signify the 42 laws of Ma'at. And many of our people know about the 10 commandments, which were omitted from the 42 laws of Ma'at from ancient Kemet. And here you can see what I'm talking about. The temple of Isis, built thousands of years ago. And on the other side, you can see a structure in Greece today. Many of the other institutions, it's the same story. I'm not going to waste any more time, but I'll just run through these pictures. And we have our very own Rhodes Memorial. Students of Peace Must Fall, Rhodes Must Fall, recently talked about Cecil John Rhodes falling. You know, Rhodes must fall. And yet we still have a place called Rhodes Memorial. The structure is the same. I will talk more and more about this because there is more to it. It relates to our ancient sciences because these people not only stole, as we said, land, they also stole the sciences, the mystics, the mysteries of ancient Africa, and they demonized them. Most of our black people today, when they think of Egypt, they think of Yiputa, the land of slavery, where the Jews were enslaved. It's the land of slavery. You know? Black people never think of ancient Egypt or Kemet as our original history. Our original center of civilization. Just as Europeans always reference everything back to Greece and Rome, we have to reference everything back to Kemet and Kush. You see? Yeah. The Xhosa people speak of Embo. Embo is the ancient Kushite civilization, where we originated from, at the foot of the mountains of, the hill, Kilimanjaro. You see?